Welcome to this meeting of Council. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting may be captured as part of this recording. Indigo Shire Council acknowledges the original custodians of these lands. The people of the rivers and the hills have walked these lands for thousands of years as well as today, and we pay respect to the elders of the past, present and emerging. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Do we have any apologies and leave of absence?
Director Ian Allen, Madam Mayor.
Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? Move to open forum. Do we have any questions for open forum, CEO?
No questions by the time of 5 o'clock deadline, Madam Mayor.
Do any councillors have any community and council achievements? I'll move now to condolences. Councillor Gaffney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Okay, Robert Voigt, also known as Toby Voigt, was a councillor with the United Shire of Beechworth from 1975 to 1992 and was Shire President from 1982 to 1983. Of his many achievements, he was the captain of the Beechworth CFA and a life member of the CFA. As a colleague of his on council said to me recently, Robert Voigt didn't just put out fires, but he saved people's lives. I'd like to move a motion that under seal, a letter of condolence be sent to his wife, Diane, his sons, Brian and Jeffrey, and his daughter, Jo.
Can I have someone to second that motion? Seconded by Councillor Horn. I'll take the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Any further condolences? No. Move now to item 8, confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. The recommendation is that the following minutes be confirmed. 1, minutes of the council meeting held on 13 December 22 as published on council's website, and 2, confidential minutes of the council meeting held on 13 December 2022 as provided to councillors under separate cover. Can I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Gaffney, seconded Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Gaffney, would you like to speak? Councillor Shepherd. All those in favour? Carried. Item 9 is business arising from the previous minutes. There's 2 questions from Councillor Tyson with responses provided. Item 10 is petitions, and there are none. Move now to item 11, planning and corporate services. 11.1 is the January finance report. The recommendation is that council accepts the year-to-date January 2023 finance report. Can I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Croucher.
Not a big speech. It's great to see at the end of January that the bottom line of the financial position is favourable to the Q1 forecast.
Councillor Tyson. Sorry, I'll take the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.2, the Q2 financial forecast. This item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 adopts the Q2 full year forecast figures for both operating as shown in the operating statement below and capital as shown in the attached capital works monitor. 2, directs the CEO to report against these forecast figures for the remainder of the financial year. 3, notes the Q2 forecast full year unfavourable result of 262,507, and 4, directs the CEO to recoup the unfavourable result in the 23-24 budget, ensuring that the previously determined 2023-24 end of financial year cash balance is still achieved. Can I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yeah, we've had a unusual start to the year in relation to flood damage. Part of the impact on that does flow through to the budget, so we need to account for that. and the projects that can and can't be completed at this time.
Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, I'd just like to support those remarks. There have been considerable supply chain issues and we're still dealing with the ramifications from a storm damage earlier in the year and later last year.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the Capital Works Monitor of the Q2 financial forecast, on page 1, it talks about community facilities, which the second one down is the Rutherglen Kindergarten. At a briefing meeting on the 14th of February, on the monitor, on the second item down, the Rutherglen Kindergarten, it said to replace shade sail with roof structure at walkway, design and construct, budget $50,000. After that, it said savings $50,000, and then it said not to proceed. The same document on the 21st of February 2023, the $50,000 was back in the briefing budget for that project. On the 28th today, that same document is out of the budget, but instead of not to proceed, it is in planning. I reported to council on the 14th of February and the 21st of February that a toddler had fallen through a plate glass window at the Rutherglen Kindergarten in 2022. A glazier brought to repair the window found that the glass was very thin and dangerous and did not meet the Australian standard. All windows at the kindergarten need to be replaced. There was a risk of death or serious injury if the glass was not replaced to the Australian standard. Indigo North Alice, who run the kindergarten, the building which is owned by Indigo Shire Council, reported to Indigo Shire Council, the owner of the kindergarten. Indigo Shire refused to meet the cost of repair or replacement. We don't have to and we won't. The safety of our children should be paramount. We have a moral obligation to our children's safety. So much for our risk management policy. This was never brought to councillors and the audit and risk committee. Yet we are happy to spend $657,000 on rail trails, which is also mentioned in this same report. I'd like to move an amendment to the Capital Works Monitor on page 1 under community facilities. The second item is the Rutherglen Kindergarten building. The project description is replace shade sail with roof structure at walkway. I would like to add to that or even replace it with design and construct windows that meet Australia standards at the Rutherglen Kindergarten. I move that amendment.
So, Councillor Gaffney, you are moving an amendment to the motion to include design and construction of windows at the Rutherglen Kindergarten to the Capital Works Monitor.
To meet Australian standards.
So, Councillor Goldsworthy, are you happy for that inclusion in the original motion? You have a
I just
question?
have a question of the CEO. Do the current windows of the kindergarten meet Australian standards?
Sally knows a bit more about this than I do, but my understanding is that the standards changed some years ago, perhaps even some decades ago, but there's no requirement to retrospectively change all windows in all buildings to the new standard until such time as they may break or be replaced for some other reason. Then they need to be replaced to the new standards. We have a lot of buildings, we have a lot of glass in those buildings, so there's not a requirement on council or any other bodies to replace all their glass to new standards until they need replacing. In that particular case, the obligation, like all leases, the obligation on the tenant is for the tenant to replace any broken glass. And if there's glass broken, the tenant is required to replace it, and they'd be required to replace it with the new standards.
Just
A point of order, Madam Mayor. I asked that the amendment be moved. I didn't ask whether the mover wanted that change or not. And to ask a question of the CEO, which I don't think the CEO would know. I've certainly spoken to the
Okay,
Chief Executive.
let's deal with whether you would accept the amendment as part of the original motion.
I need some clarification of it, so that's why I'm asking a question. And from what I understand, I'm entitled to ask a question at any stage.
I think that he should continue with his questions to satisfy that he's happy with the amendment.
I've asked to move. I've moved the amendment.
And I'm seeing if it's okay with the mover.
Well, it doesn't have to be.
So the protocol would be that if there's an amendment, the mover would be the original mover asked if they're happy to incorporate it. If they are, then it becomes the new motion. If they are not happy with it, then we debate whether or not we vote on whether the amended motion becomes the motion. So that's what the original mover has the opportunity to say to incorporate it or not. And that's what I suggest you do now. And if Councillor Goldsworth is not happy, then we debate and vote on the amendment.
Yeah, well, I'm seeking clarity on it. So the other thing is, what would it actually cost to replace all the windows in the kindergarten, do you know?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head, Councillor. I don't know, Sally, if you have any indication at all what that might be. It's okay if you don't know. We don't.
Oh, well, the answer is we don't know, but as the CEO has just alluded, there's numerous buildings in numerous categories of building right across the Shire that could arguably have the request to be treated.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I'm asking that the Rutherford Glen kindergarten, I'm not mentioning other kindergartens.
Okay, I'm going to ask that the mover either accept it as part of the motion now. And if not, then we can ask these questions as part of the next part of the debate.
Sure. No, I don't feel there's sufficient quality of conversation so far. I haven't got the answers that I wish, so no, I don't.
Okay, so now I'll seek a seconder for the amendment. Councillor Horn would like to second the amendment.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak to the amendment.
Councillor Gaffney, would you like to speak to the amendment?
I've been out to the Rutherford Glen kindergarten and I've looked at it. There are windows in there that are from ceiling to floor. They are dangerous. I've spoken to the CEO as recently as yesterday. He said that all of the windows do not meet Australian standards, and he's got that from the glazier. To argue whether we need to check all of our kindergartens, that's not a matter of this amendment. This glass is dangerous. I'm told that it's a miracle that that child wasn't seriously injured. Kindergarten children shouldn't be in an environment that we know is unsafe. And I believe that Indigo Shire Council has a moral obligation to say that the tenants are responsible for broken glass. I'm not asking that that window be repaired. I'm asking that all of those windows be replaced because none of them meet the Australian standard. I'm told that a window replacement costs about $300. I'm informed by the CEO that there's probably between 9 and a dozen windows in that establishment. The safety of our children should be paramount. As I said, we're prepared to spend $657,000 on rail trails, but we can't spend a few thousand looking after the safety of our children.
Councillor Horn, would you like to speak as the seconder?
Yes, I totally concur with Councillor Gaffney. Children are very boisterous and unpredictable, and yes, I think it's a very reasonable thing for us to take care of this situation at this time.
Councillor Goldsworthy, you have some questions?
So is the proposal for the $50,000 to all be allocated towards replacing the windows in the kindergarten?
No, I would say that it would be less than $10,000, and I think the 50,000 has been removed because it's earmarked as an overrun. So I think it's a matter of putting in the amount that's required, and that's why part of the motion is that it be designed and constructed windows that meet the Australian standards. I'm not asking for any special windows. All I'm asking is that they meet the Australian standard. I'm told that the window that the toddler went through, the glass was so thin, it was very, very dangerous. And if something happened to another child at that kindergarten, when Indigo Shire had been notified about it and we've done nothing, I think is moralistic. It's almost rock bottom.
Yep. So I was just wondering how much you actually want in the budget. That was the question.
I don't know how much it would cost, but all right, we'll say 15,000. I'm sure there'd be an overrun for that, which could go to other projects.
Can I ask the CEO what he thinks a reasonable estimate of the replacement cost would be?
Look, I'm not really familiar with it. Maybe Ewan might have an estimate, a crack at. I don't know. I don't know how many glasses there are, many pieces of glass. I don't know what size, shape, and substance they are. But look, some provisions put in. We can come back at a later time and look for more money or less money at a later time. So if council's of the view to put an amount in, I'm not sure 15,000. Probably as good as any number, and take it from there. How much? I don't know.
And just can I ask what has actually been done in relation to it from a council perspective? What was the plan ahead of this ad hoc amendment?
I might throw to Sally on this one. There has been some work being done in the background since the discussion. So I'd like if you could update us, if you wouldn't mind, Sally.
Sure.
I take exception of an ad hoc. I have raised this for the last two briefing meetings.
I think it would still be appropriate to get a response from the director. It's still appropriate to get a response from the director.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. As I mentioned, there's a number of buildings and types of buildings where this situation exists. So what we're doing is looking into it across the board to see what councils, where the need for upgrading the facilities to the current Australian standards is in the different council buildings, and we're going to bring that forward to you for future deliberation once we've got that sort of broader picture understood and scoped. But the advice received to date is that council is not out of line with its obligations in terms of the compliance of the buildings, because the code doesn't need to apply retrospectively, albeit appreciating that some of the current Australian standards aren't in existence in all of our buildings, and there is perhaps a genuine need for council to look at and think about that when it's got all of the information in front of it. So that information is coming to council. We just haven't pulled it together at this point, but we're working on it.
Just another question. Do you know how old this building is and how many times windows have been broken in there to cause the issue?
I know my observation looks like a 1970s type building from what I've seen. I don't have a visual answer to that. Does anyone else has one? And I'm certain I don't think anyone here tonight would know how many windows have broken since its existence, except Sally's just waved at me again.
Sorry. The information I've been provided is that council hasn't replaced many windows in recent times, so it's it's not a very good answer. It's not a common occurrence.
So just curious as to the CEO's suggestion, is this the best way to address this issue, or should we look at doing it across the board? So should we deal with the issue immediately at Rutherglen because it's been raised, or should we follow the process where we look at
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
across the
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
What's the point of order?
The point of order is the amendment is the Rutherglen kindergarten. It's nothing to do with other kindergartens throughout Indigo Shire. I'm putting that this is an urgent issue. It's the number one priority for Indigo North Health. What's happening at other kindergartens, if Councillor Goldsworthy wants to move the motion, he's more than welcome to, but to introduce things that are irrelevant to this particular item,
I don't think
which
that's
is the
irrelevant.
safety at the Rutherglen kindergarten.
I'm going to move on to the next question or comment from Councillor Tyson. Are you speaking to the motion or a question,
A
Councillor?
question, yeah, just seeking some clarification. The debate's been good. So the ask is $15,000 for the repair to the windows. So that's the amount that we're talking about. Okay, no, fine. That's all I need to check. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd, did you want to speak to the motion or a question?
I wanted to speak to against the motion, really. Well, I just want to speak to it. As soon as you talk about Rutherglen, I just think about Beechworth Kindergarten and Childcare and Yakandanda Childcare and Kindergarten, and wonder, I mean, I don't know, have kids fallen through their windows? I'm not aware. I don't have any, I feel uncomfortable on voting on this without more information. I liked the officer's suggestion that we're bringing our responsibility, we're looking into our responsibility around those. I would say I would be wanting to look at childcare and kindergartens, anywhere where there's children. And I want a report to come to us around that, and a discussion to be had around, like, I think it's difficult to choose one of them that one councillor has heard there's an issue with. For all I know, all of them have issues that we need to address, and I would prefer to hear what other buildings have, especially, as I say, ones with children, that we might need to escalate the bringing the windows up to Australian standards, whether they're old or not. And that would, of course, include the Rutherglen kindergarten. So I prefer that discussion happen, because I think it's a more strategic, more open discussion rather than just looking at one in particular.
Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yes, so I'm of a similar view. I'd rather we do this on a strategic basis rather than ad hoc for this one facility. As has been indicated, there are plans in motion to try and do that. I think this is circumventing it. Obviously, it's unfortunate that there was an injury to a child apparently last year at some stage. We don't really have any solid costings on what it's worth. I think for consideration of this budget, we should look at this whole process strategically, let the CEO and the staff go through and bring it back to a report for us to consider. So for that reason, I'd say this amendment should be denied, and then we vote for the recommendation as it was.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn? Yes. Sorry, I think she might have reserved her right.
No, I do speak.
You've already spoken? Okay, so well then you've had your opportunity to speak. So Councillor Croucher.
Yes, I'm torn between two, but the safety of kids is extremely important as far as I'm concerned. I'm just a little bit worried about precedents. If this comes up, how many other people are going to start calling in for it as well? Does that costing, would that include installation and everything as well? Does that include, is it just for the glass? Would that cover everything this stage?
Are you asking questions of Councillor Gaffney's costing?
Well, either the CEO or just a question.
The staff haven't put any costings before
No,
council.
okay.
So we were speculating whether 15,000 was enough.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, I think everyone has it. Councillor Tyson, you asked a question. Would you like the opportunity to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney, would you like to sum up on your amendment?
The amendment is nothing to do with other kindergartens. We know that an incident happened at that kindergarten. Councillors were never told about it. The Indigo North Health reported it to Indigo Shire, who refused to make any payments at all. It was certainly never been brought up at audit and risk. At the next meeting, I'll certainly raise it. And I know that there's a management plan or policy later on in this council meeting. All I'm saying is that I've got grave concerns about the children at Rutherglen Kindergarten. I've heard no other people talking about whether it's Yakandanda Kindergarten or Beechworth Kindergarten. I think that's brought in as just a furphy about let's examine them all. This is a matter of urgency. It's a very small amount of money. I don't know why Indigo Shire rejected it. They've got a moralistic right to say that people who are renting need to pay for damage to glass or a window. These are windows that need replacing. I haven't looked at the windows at other kindergartens, but I don't believe that'd be ceiling to floor, which is exceptionally dangerous, and that's a very busy kindergarten. And I think it's a matter of urgency, without saying the flowery, let's look at all of the others. If you want to look at all of the others, you could have moved a motion yourself, but you haven't. The amendment is only about the Rutherglen Kindergarten, where there has been a very dangerous incident that a child could have lost their lives.
Okay, so I'll put that to the vote. I want to be really clear about what you're voting on. It's the amendment to become part of the substantive motion. So you're voting to include that in the original motion or not. So I'll put the motion that the capital monitor is amended to include in the community facilities that the Rutherglen Kindergarten has design and construction of windows to be brought up to Australian standards with a budget amount of $15,000 allocated. All those in favour? Councillor Tyson, Croucher, Horn, Gaffney. Those against? Councillor Shepherd, Goldsworthy, Price. It's carried. So now that becomes the substantive motion. And okay, so we go back to the original mover and the seconder of the motion, which was Councillor Goldsworthy, you moved, and Councillor Tyson, you seconded. Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to speak to the motion? Okay, so the people that have already spoken to that motion are Goldsworthy, Tyson and Gaffney. So would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll allow the, you wouldn't like to speak, Councillor Shepherd or Croucher or Horn? I'll go back to the mover of the motion. Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to sum up?
Sure. Look, despite the late amendment to it, it's certainly worth passing. There are a lot of good projects in there that we should be supporting.
I'll put it to the vote now. It's the motion including the amendment. All those in favour? Councillor Tyson, Goldsworthy, Price, Gaffney, Horn and Croucher. Those against? Councillor Shepherd, carried. Moving now to item 11.3, the planning permit application PP 22-0192 Payne Road, Beechworth. The recommendation is that council approves and endorses the attached development plan for PP 22-0192 Payne Road, Beechworth, pursuant to clause 43.04 of the Indigo Planning Scheme, subject to the following notes. One, that the area adjacent to the seasonal watercourse is to be protected as a flora and fauna corridor through the application of a section 173 agreement at the time of subdivision. 2, Payne Road and the Stanley Road intersection is to be upgraded and sealed to the satisfaction of the reasonable authority and Department of Transport. 3, Payne Road is to be upgraded and sealed to the satisfaction of the reasonable responsible authority. 4, this plan is conceptual and may be subject to minor change following further detailed design in relation to stormwater treatment. Any subsequent plan of subdivision must be generally in accordance with the approved development plan. Do I have someone to move that? Moved councillor Tyson, seconded councillor Croucher. Councillor Tyson.
Yes, another development for Beechworth. I know there are some concerns, but this does come with some very good covenants which address the environmental overlay and the removal of wastewater and sediment from the block. Thank you.
Councillor Croucher, would you like to speak?
Yeah, it seems that since the previous application was not approved, I can remember that one, the concerns in relation to things like contamination and bushfire risks have been somewhat resolved and resulting in an approval subject to those additional notes that are in the recommendation for this development plan.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney.
The 173 agreement, which will have to be acted upon before this comes as a plan of subdivision, are quite arduous. And we are only voting for a development plan, not for a plan of subdivision.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Go back to the mover. Councillor Tyson, would you like to sum up?
No, thank you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11.4 is the fraud and corruption control policy. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council adopts the attached fraud and corruption control policy 2023. Do I have someone to move that? Moved councillor Shepherd, seconded councillor Gaffney. Councillor Shepherd.
This policy is 10 years old. It's important to update it. There's been changes in acts. We've also, I suppose, in 10 years, come across a lot more fraud. And in our personal lives, let alone in council lives, and corruptions around all sorts of areas. So timely that this be updated. And once this is done, there will be a plan that will come with it. It's been approved by the Audit and Risk Committee. The improvements have been made by the Audit and Risk Committee, and it's the internal auditors looked at it. So as far as I can see, it looks certainly like a good governance document to approve.
Councillor Gaffney.
I'm pleased that it's written into this report that Indigo Shire Council will not tolerate fraud in any form.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll return to you as mover. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to sum up? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Move now to item 12, Community and Economic Development. Item 12.1 is the Australia Day review process. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that councillor endorses 1, the formation of an Australia Day review working group, and 2, the Australia Day review working group's terms of reference. Can I have someone to move that? Moved councillor Shepherd, seconded councillor Goldsworthy. Councillor Shepherd.
So many local government councils are reviewing how their organisations contribute to Australia Day events, ceremonies and awards to reflect their constituents' beliefs and to build better relations with First Nations people. One of the priority actions from our Reconciliation Action Plan is to consult with the community regarding changes to Australia Day functions, including the format and the Australia Day awards process. I don't think we're looking at changing the date. It's not in our power to do so, nor do we want to stop people celebrating. In the words of the Australia Day Council, the day to reflect on what it means to be Australian, to celebrate contemporary Australia, and to acknowledge our history. We're wanting our community to rethink what this day could look like for them, whilst respecting Reconciliation Australia's statement that for many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, it isn't a day for celebration. Instead, 26th of January represents a day on which their way of life was invaded and changed forever. In seeking communities' feedback, we will set up a representative committee whose job it will be to set up an engagement process with council staff to ensure that people can be heard. During the council plan and engagement, many people asked us to work more closely with our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island community, and our first sign of respect is to engage them and the community in this important discussion. So I recommend that we form an Australia Day review working group and that we pass the terms of reference.
Councillor Goldsworthy. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
I was taught to always look at the intention behind an action. And I think we can all probably agree that Australia Day was created to bring people together, the states and everyone who's lucky enough to reside in this country. A shared lack of recognition in the Constitution has persisted. Sorry, just lost my little spot there. Has persisted since colonial times, but we have matured. Fortunately, we no longer believe that the world is flat and we are making moves to heal and learn from the past. In Indigo Shire, we have less than 30 community members who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders. So I must say I was pretty shocked when I learned that a local didgeridoo player revealed that he knew absolutely nothing about reconciliation processes we are embarking on. And then when Senator Jacinta Price, with her lived life experience as the Deputy Mayor of Alice Springs, made it clear in an interview that Australia Day celebrations were not an issue for the vast majority of people who voted for her, I was confounded. I find it hard to understand why we are still grappling with how to draw a line in the sand, how to move forward together, particularly when we have people from across the world clamouring for the chance to live here. It's pretty obvious that we have to do something differently. And I must say, I've been deeply saddened very recently to learn that we regularly use culturally inappropriate wording. I'm told that many folks do not wish to be referred to as Indigenous people or have the Canadian First Nation label applied to them. Perhaps something as simple as settling on more fitting language that respects and celebrates our shared heritage would be a good place to start. Because of the nature, scale and the scope of this issue for all Australians, I think it's vital that we have a countrywide agreement on how and when we celebrate this wide brown land of ours. And I believe that it should be by elected members rather than appointed bodies. I will not be supporting this motion as I believe it is not in the remit of local government and would more appropriately be handled at the federal level.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney?
No.
Oh, Councillor Tyson?
Yeah, thank you. Australia Day really should be celebrated. It's the only day that we have on our national calendar that actually addresses the fact that we have nearly 200 nations and ethnicities represented in our country. I feel if we want to change it, it shouldn't be left up to individual councils or municipalities across Australia to change it, or with a different intent, whether it be good or bad. And if we are going to change it, I think it should be held through a national referendum so that the vast majority of Australian people can have a say and it be a broader opinion of what should happen. So I'm not supporting the current motion as it is. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher.
Yes, I'm very, very tied between both ways at this particular stage because I know our Australia Day celebration at where I come from, Kuatingan, was very, very happy happy time when the community could get together. Lots of great things were happening and people went away quite happy. And each year we get over 100 people. I like the idea of speaking to the people of our great shire about what they would like to do as well. But I feel we've got a very important group at this stage with the community grants and awards committee. I know we had a big discussion about this down there, and I would really like to sort of go through them first and then see what comes about this. I'd like more discussion with my fellow councillors about what to do and so forth. I'm not against the idea of having a review working group, but I'm just a bit worried about this review working group would maybe get the wrong sort of people who would be directing us in a direction that we may not be wanting to go. I would prefer to actually defer it, but at this particular stage, I'm not sure. I don't know whether I'll be voting for this one at all. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? I'd like to say a few words about this one. This has been one of the duties that we've had to perform or been asked to perform as a councillor in the 6 years that I've been on council. Prior to that, I'd go along with my grandparents and enjoy much the same day as Councillor Croucher is describing, not giving a great deal of thought to whether it was a day that was inclusive for all people or not. I just enjoyed a good day with community. In more recent times, I've really come to understand just how deeply offensive this day can be to so many people. And when on the day that I want to celebrate being Australian, I want it to be inclusive of all people. And so it's made me struggle with how to celebrate on that day. I've still attended our Australia Day ceremonies because I feel that it's part of the duty of being a councillor. We host these ceremonies, and I can see the goodwill of the people there on these days just wanting to celebrate being Australian and being part of their community. But I think it's these same reasonable people that we could invite to be part of a review working group, these same people that we could put these questions to say, if there's a particular group feeling excluded from this day, how could we change the format of what we do? How could we make this day more inclusive? And I think that we generally back our communities when we go out and consult with them, that they would come to a very reasonable conclusion. I don't see why this would be any different. I don't have concerns about who would be on this group because I would be approving it, you would be approving it. It would be for council to approve whether we thought that this group was made up of the right sorts of people. I'm dismayed by some of the conversation because I think that it does greater harm, and I don't think that's what some of the councillors are seeking to do. I think that we should be more open to this discussion than this debate reflects tonight. We have adopted a reconciliation action plan, and this is one of the deliverables within that plan. I think that it's really important that we go back to exactly what it is. It's not changing the date. It's not banning the community barbecue at Tangambalanga. It's not taking a really oppositional view to people celebrating being Australian. What it is recognising the position that we're in now, where the discussion is up to, and that there are lots of different people across our shire that are having different versions of this conversation as this room represents. And I think that why wouldn't we get together some of those very reasonable people, a very representative group, to say, how should we continue to celebrate being Australian and what should that day look like?
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
What's the point of order?
Section 58 of the governance rules says if the chairperson wishes to move a motion or amendment or engage in debate, which you are, the chair must be vacated.
I'm finished. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Otherwise, I'll go back to the seconder who reserved their right. Councillor Goldsworthy.
I'll just read out a passage from the Australia Day ceremony as was done this year at Beechworth. On Australia Day, we reflect on our nation's true history, which began tens of thousands of years ago with the first Australians. our world's oldest living culture, and on the impact that European settlement had on our first Australians and their way of life. We respect their extensive knowledge of the land, sea and sky, which allow them to care for the country as they would a family member. We reflect on our modern history, the waves of immigration that have shaped us into one of the world's greatest multicultural success stories. We respect that regardless of where we come from, the faith we follow, or the language we grew up speaking, we are all Australian and we all have a contribution to make. I think that that's what this review is about. This review is around looking at how we celebrate Australia Day, being inclusive, acknowledging the past and trying to move forward together. I think we're on a slow journey towards that. It is a recommendation from our adopted RAP, and I don't see it as us trying to change Australia Day. From what I've observed, I think Australia Day, the crowds are slowly getting older and getting a little bit smaller. And it's just the way we celebrate it. The way, what I'm hoping out of this review is that we get a better way and we get more people attending in an event that is more inclusive. So for that reason, I support it.
Councillor Shepherd, I'll go back to you as the mover to sum up.
Well, I think you two spoke quite well in summing up. I think I agree with your sentiments. This isn't, firstly, we approved this RAP. The time for debate around what was in it was back then, I think. Like we went through all the actions, we read them, we discussed them, we talked about them. We knew that one of the first actions was the Australia Day review and to get the community's feedback on it. So we knew that then. So to do this now in front of our community, in front of the media, to say that we don't support it, I think is a bit of a shame. It's embarrassing. I think we have to let the community look at this themselves and tell us if they want to continue having Australia Day events on Australia Day, but they want to change the way we open it, or like it's part of our reconciliation plan. It's something we said we do. We said we wanted to reconcile with our local and beyond with our local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island community. And so it's a journey we're on. It's a process we're on. We don't know where it's going to go, but we've set ourselves up for it. So, I really suggest that to vote against this. I don't know where it leads us with our reconciliation action plan. What do we do then? Are we not going to do reconciliation? Anyway, I'll leave it there.
Okay, so I'm going to put it to the vote. It is that council endorses the formation of an Australia Day review working group, and number 2, the Australia Day review working group's terms of reference. All those in favour? Councillor Shepherd, Goldsworthy, Price, Croucher. Those against? Tyson, Horn, Gaffney. The motion is carried. Item 12.2 is the Rutherglen Silo Art Precinct Report, Business Case and Concept Design. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council adopts the Rutherglen Silo Art Precinct Report, Business Case and Concept Design. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Shepherd.
So the draft Rutherglen Silo Precinct Report was placed on public exhibition at the November meeting. There were 12 submissions have come in the time that it's been out, 90 days. And those 12 submissions, I'd like to thank the people who did take the time to read it and to give us feedback. The table shows the changes that were made in the document in response to these submissions, and they were taken seriously and changes have been made. And I think they certainly add to the plan. The Place Plan Committee and community have been very much a part of this process and development of the project plan. I'm happy to support something with so much local input and ownership. And aside, when a couple of years ago, when the community were talking about the silo precinct plan, I was a little bit like, well, That's not something we've talked about in council. Where's that coming from? What is that going to look like? So it's been interesting just sitting back watching this whole process happen, and the community really has developed this plan, and I'm happy to support the community's idea on this.
Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yeah, once again, this is a fantastic initiative that Indigo Shire is undertaking. If the funds do ever come up, it'll be a game-changing thing for the Rutherglen community, which has fought very hard to have this plan implemented. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Horn.
Yes, I agree. There's been a great deal of buy-in by the local community, and it is certainly an aspirational plan that we have. And yes, I look forward to advancing it as and when the funds become available.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney, you've got your microphone on. Did you want to speak? I'll return to the mover, Councillor Shepherd, to sum up. No sum up. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 6 is infrastructure services, and the first item is item 13.1, the 2022-2023 Community Sustainability Grants recommendation. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council allocates $16,852.80 via the 2022-23 Community Sustainability Grants Program to the applicants as set out below. I won't read them. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in total. I'll ask someone to move that recommendation, please. Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Horn. Councillor Croucher.
Yes, our grants program, I think, is terrific for our shire. There's lots and lots of opportunities for our community to obtain grants from our shire. And this one in particular is another important opportunity for our communities to access funds in the area of sustainability projects.
Councillor Horn, would you like to speak as seconder?
It's nice to see the spread amongst the different towns, and yes, we look forward to some interesting things happening. And again, it's wonderful to have community involvement.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher, would you like to sum up? No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 13.2, the Buller Gas lease and licence renewal. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 resolves to write to Alpine Resorts Victoria to request a renewal of the Buller Gas lease for a further 10-year period from 6 June 2023. 2 notes that a letter has already been sent to Alpine Resorts Victoria notifying them of Council's intention to extend the licence to operate Buller Gas. Can I have someone to move that? Councillor Gaffney, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Gaffney.
Buller Gas, so important to Indigo Shire Council and the Indigo Shire Council community, and in particular the ratepayers. In 2021-2022, the surplus for council was $675,000. In 2022-2023, so far it's $572,000, and I would imagine that it will come up higher than $675,000. Without having this contract for Buller Gas, it would be at least a 6 or 7% rate increase for all ratepayers in Indigo Shire.
Councillor Tyson.
No, thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to the mover to sum up. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 13.3 is Beechworth to Yackandandah Rail Trail Section 7 construction tender. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 awards contract PM19/08-0017-10 for Section 7 of the Beechworth to Yackandandah Rail Trail to Excel Grey Bruni for the lump sum price of $1,184,922 excluding GST, 2, authorises the CEO to sign the contract documents and affix the council's common seal. And 3, authorises the CEO financial delegation to approve contract variations up to a total of 10% of the contract of the signed contract value. Do I have someone to move that? Moved Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded Councillor Croucher. Councillor Goldsworthy.
This is the last section or contract to be awarded for the rail trail. It's 7 sections. This is the last one. It's about 3.5 kilometres long, which for a trail that's about 31 kilometres, it's a bit under 10%, a bit over 10% of our the trail, and it'll just be really good to get it done. It's been going on for a number of years now. Super keen to see it completed, ridden on, publicised, and the expected health benefits locally and for the tourism increase. So it's not until it's completed that we can really put it out there on the Australian stage and say, come visit us. I know it gets used now by some visitors and certainly by locals, but once it's completed, we'll have a world-class asset.
Councillor Croucher.
Yes, the need to finish the rail trail via Section 7 and award the contract to Excel Grey Brunei is an important decision in finally completing the Beechworth Yak Rail Trail.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
I have a question from a ratepayer.
Yes, your question.
The question is regarding the Kibble Lane upgrade. Does the $305,000 for this project come from council funds?
And who's the question to?
The CEO, thank you.
CEO.
The project itself has received considerable state government funding, but that funding won't change as a result of this tender. So technically, this is an additional amount over and above the state grant. So yes, it is council funds, and the item earlier in the agenda approved the extra expenditure that would allow for this tender to now be accepted.
And the second part of that question is, and if so, why at a time when there is such an extensive need throughout the Shire for essential road and drainage maintenance works?
Respectfully, Councillor, it's probably not, it's a very general question that I don't think the council would want necessarily to hear me describe to the community the entirety of the budget and why we're not spending that money on other things. I think it's a very generic question. It's not one of clarity that I feel I could add to this particular decision. If you could perhaps rephrase the question in a different way.
Yeah, it's worth phrasing. There is a part 2 to that question. Why can't this non-essential project be deferred until a more appropriate time?
The project itself is subject to milestone requirements of the funder. So no, it can't be deferred to another time. We're on a strict timeline to complete this project as described in the grant funding agreement.
Okay, would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney?
I've got some questions. Has it been factored in how much the ongoing maintenance for this rail trail is going to be? Is that per annum? And I realise that it's been washed away in many parts during the recent weather events, but that could be continuing. Do we know what the ongoing maintenance costs will be?
So when you say factored in, it doesn't need to be factored into this tender decision today. So that's a separate question about our future budgets, making sure that our future budgets included adequate provision for maintenance of the trail. We did increase the budget this year to provide for some basic maintenance, and I think that was clearing and sweeping of the paths to keep them free of debris. Certainly down the track in years to come, there will need to be a level of maintenance. It doesn't need to be a level of maintenance in the first year, but down the track there will be a level of maintenance, and those that, like with any infrastructure council invests in, all infrastructure investing needs maintenance, so future budgets will need to provide for maintenance of all of our infrastructure needs, including the rail trails.
This question could be to the mover. Will this be the last time we'll be going out to tender for this project? I remember describing it recently as a money pit and you said it wasn't. Well, it just seems to me that it is. Do you have a completion date? I think it's been going for 7 years now.
Look, that detail escapes me in some regard, but it's my expectation that this is the last contract that will be awarded for the construction of it. I can't see where another contract will be needed to be awarded that would come to this council for decision. And in relation to completion date, I think I heard around about August this year, but I could be wrong.
Perhaps the CEO might have a completion date. I saw you on the TV news talking about it wasn't far off, but I didn't catch a date.
I'm going to defer to our manager of capital projects who's in the room with us today representing Ian Allett. I'm sure he'll have a better answer than I will.
Yeah, so at the moment we're working to a complete construction completion date of end of financial year, but then there's still final reporting and a few other bits and pieces that we need to finish off just to tie up the grant funding. So there's two separate things happening there.
So is this the end of the money apart from maintenance costs towards the future? Is this the last time we dip into money for this trail?
I believe this will be the last time a tender will need to come before council for approval. There'll certainly need to be monies spent to tidy up the completion of the project.
One other question that I've been asked recently is on that trail, which is about 30 kilometres long, is that right? There's one toilet?
I don't know the toilet count of the trail, just off the top of my head.
Oh, that's not very nice, Councillor Croucher.
Does anyone else want to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd?
I want to ask a question. It says that the final design and priority treatment is still under review and subject to further specialist road safety advice. I wasn't quite sure how that worked. If we've the tender's already gone out.
Yeah, so what we're looking at doing is got a sealing the whole width of the road, because if we sealed it at just 2 metres wide, then you'd have traffic and bikes colliding. You'd have a lot of maintenance issues, a lot of drainage issues. So the way that we've tendered it is to seal the whole width. Now, whether that seal treatment we divide up into separate lanes or whether we have it as a single lane, we're still working through that sort of detail. So it's still a sealed surface all the way across is what's based in this paper here. But how we finish that sealed surface might vary depending on some advice from safety specialists.
Great, thank you. Being on the bike reference group, we've walked and looked at that, I think leaving it as the last piece was absolutely purposeful. It's a difficult, tricky space to work out how to do it safely. So thank you for finding a solution that hopefully is going to work.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to the mover. No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Tyson, Shepherd, Goldsworthy, Price, Gaffney, Croucher against. Councillor Horn, it's carried. Item 14 is executive management and item 14.1 is the risk management policy. It's for decision. The recommendation is that council adopts the 2023 risk management policy as attached. To have someone to move that. Moved Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Horn. Councillor Tyson?
It's more of a procedural matter, and it's just another piece of documentation that we keep needing to update. Thank you.
Councillor Horn? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney?
Just a question, and I don't mind who answers it. It's on page 88, and it talks about the description failure to take responsibility for risk management. And then it says control treatments encourage reporting to EMT and or council of high and extreme risks. I wonder whether that should be EMT and council, and whether the child falling through the plate glass window at the kindergarten, was that reported to EMT? It certainly didn't come to council. And I'm just wondering whether both should be informed rather than one or the other, particularly in cases of extreme risk, which I think is at the Rutherglen kindergarten.
So is that a question to the CEO or to Carla Hanlon?
Either or, not and or though.
Look, I think I'd take that one on anyway. You've quoted from the risk management table. So the controls is about encouraging reporting to EMT and or council, which means depending on the level of the risks, some things would be reported to EMT and other things would be reported to council. So that's things that are in our risk register.
We're talking about extreme risk.
Yeah, so extreme risk would be reported to council.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether the child going through the window, which was reported to council, ever went to EMT or council. Well, I definitely know it didn't come to council. Did it go to EMT?
No, the first I heard personally, the first that I heard about that incident was when you reported that through a councillor briefing.
Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to the mover of the motion, Councillor Tyson. Would you like to sum up?
No, thank you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.2 is the instrument of appointment and authorisation, Planning and Environment Act 1987. The item is for decision. The recommendation is in the exercise of powers conferred by Section 224 of the Local Government Act 1989 and the other legislation referred to in the attached instruments of appointment and authorisation. Indigo Shire Council resolves that 1, the member of council staff referred to in attachment 1 be appointed and authorised as set out in the instrument, and 2, the instrument in the attachment come into force immediately upon resolution of council and are revoked on the date the officer ceases employment by council or until council determines to vary or revoke it. Can I have someone to move that? Moved Councillor Gaffney, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Gaffney.
Really a procedural motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Tyson, no, nothing. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd.
Just, it's great to be approving so many of these in the planning department. We're starting to fill out the planning department. So the more that have these statutory tasks, the better it is really. And welcome to Stephen Hawkins.
Well said. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Gaffney. Would you like to sum up? No, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.3 is the Council Plan 2022-2023 Q2 Progress Report. The item is for information and the recommendation is that Council notes the Q2 2022-23 Council Plan Progress Report. To have someone to move that. Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded Councillor Croucher. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Look, this is really a report to the community. We developed this plan in consultation with them. It's halfway through it. There's 101 actions in there. 87 are on track, 9 have been completed. It's just a couple behind schedule and 3 on hold. It's an extensive body of work. It's what the council works towards for the community on behalf of the council. And yeah, it's terrific to see some of the results that are in there.
Councillor Croucher.
Yes, I'd just like to endorse Councillor Goldsworthy. Also, I'd just like to congratulate all the staff as well on all things that are going, 87% on track. In considerable times that we've had in the last 1 year or 18 months has been tremendous effort. I congratulate you. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy, back to you to sum up. No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.4 is the informal meetings of councillors' records. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council accepts the attached informal meetings of councillor records. I have someone to move that. Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak? Councillor Tyson? Any other councillor like to speak? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.5 is advisory committee minutes. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 receives the attached unconfirmed advisory committee minutes. 2 notes the following recommendation from the Indigo Environment Advisory Committee and that the matter is listed for a councillor briefing on the 7th of March 2023. A, that council prohibit the collection of firewood from all council roadsides starting 1 May 2023 as raised by the Biodiversity Working Group. And 3, notes the following recommendations from the Indigo Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee and that the matter will be brought to a future councillor briefing. A, that council approach the relevant minister with a request for an update on the project to reopen the Yadonba Aboriginal site, as well as an offer of collaboration to ensure that the site can take its place as a key cultural location within Indigo Shire. Do I have someone to move that? Moved Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Croucher.
So I've just had a look at, I've just underlined a few words that we've received these committee. We note the following recommendation of number 2 and number 3, we note the following recommendation. So as far as the full recommendation is concerned, I would like to endorse that recommendation. Sounds a bit confusing, but that's what we're doing. We're receiving and we are noting all the way through.
I think that's important clarification. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as a seconder?
I'll reserve my right.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney.
Just a question for Councillor Croucher, the mover. If you're living on a Shire road and a tree falls across your fence from the roadside and the stock get out onto the road, who is responsible? The landowner or Indigo Shire Council?
I'm not really absolutely sure, but I would suggest that the Shire would be pretty important to come down and remove some of the bits and pieces as well. But I'm not quite sure as to what that's got to do with this recommendation.
Well, it's talking about firewood, but
yeah, but it's only noting at this stage. It's not,
okay.
It's not making a recommendation. It's talking about coming to a briefing on something which is in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Croucher.
Good answer. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? You've reserved your right, Councillor Shepherd. You'd like to speak?
I'd just like to thank the advisory committees who really are looking into some of these areas of their expertise and bringing us suggestions and motions that they've supported. I think it'll be an interesting discussion about collection of firewood. And the Indigo Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee, when they did their tour of the Shire, were quite shocked to see the state of Yadonba and saw it as absolutely a very important cultural heritage site that had been left lingering really with no work being done on it for a while. So they were very supportive of us writing a letter. I hear and read in this that you're having meetings with the people involved, so there might be some action occurring around Yadonba. Is that correct?
With council, yeah, we've certainly stay in contact with Parks Victoria, and we continue to raise the issue of the urgency of fixing up Yadonba as well as other facilities that Parks Victoria is responsible for. And we have a keen interest in those things progressing. We'll also be inviting them to come and visit our council briefing sometime in the future.
Go back to Councillor Croucher as the mover if you'd like to sum up. Perfect. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.6 is contracts awarded under Chief Executive Officer delegation for December 2022 and January 2023. There for information, there was one tender awarded to XL Grey Brunei for the Gurumata Road major culvert replacement. Item 15 is notices of motion. There are none. Item 16, do any councillors have a report to provide to the meeting? No. Item 16.1 is the Mayor's Diary for December and January for information. Any questions? Item 17 is the Decisions Register. 17.1 is the Decisions Register item for information. Item 18 is general business. Do any councillors have any general business to raise for the meeting? Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, I've just had a few inquiries from property owners throughout the Shire about the progress through their property of Chilean needlegrass. And I was wondering whether or not we could put out a bit of information to people about what it looks like and what preventative measures that they may be able to deploy to try and slow it down. Thank you.
So CEO, that's a request for some information to be provided to our community about Chilean needlegrass.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make some further inquiry in the background as to what that's about, and then should be fairly straightforward. Happy to do that. If there's a bit more to it than that, I'd like the opportunity to at least inquire about what the issue is.
Any other councillors with general business? I think it's appropriate that I make mention tonight is the AGM of Albury-Wodonga Health, and today we were asked our position on whether we support a greenfield site or what's currently proposed on the existing site, and we were able to provide a position that we absolutely support a greenfield site hospital. We will be working with other surrounding councils with advocacy on this issue. Our residents already have substandard results with ambulance response times. We have no doubt that this can be exacerbated at times by the inadequate services that desperately need upgrading at the Albury-Wodonga campuses. And so we will always advocate for the highest level of care for our residents. And so I'll say it again, we totally support a greenfield site hospital. The other item I'd like to raise is that we've had our worst result in ambulance response times for the last quarter. Some 19% of Code 1 responses arrived within the 15-minute time that Ambulance Victoria has set as an appropriate time to respond to these Code 1 incidents. It's the worst response that we've had after lots of going back and forth with state government and Ambulance Victoria to try and identify and resolve what the issue is. We will continue to advocate on that. And it's really pleasing to see that there's very constructive conversations happening with state government. We had some very constructive meetings with ministers last week, and that led to a meeting today with the Minister for Ambulance Services office, where we were able to raise our concerns, demonstrate to the Minister's office that we want a very constructive relationship and that we would like to find out what is the cause of this issue. Why does it not make sense that with our frontage to the Hume Freeway and our similar geography to that of our neighbouring councils, that our results would be so poor? So we continue those discussions on behalf of our community, and they're being well received. And I think that we will continue to make progress, I hope, in the right direction. That's all I'd like to report to the meeting at this stage. I've reported on our visits with ministers in Melbourne in the most recent weekly update. Do any other councillors have any general business for the meeting? Councillor Horn.
The recent raising of a sign on the Corridor Road about a prestigious housing estate has created quite a bit of interest in Rutherglen. often from people in Reading Street, where there's another development due, and also adjacent to the sports field. Can the CEO please support some idea for the community of how the consultation processes will be carried out, and allay their fears about the extra traffic and also issues with drainage?
So, councillor, can I clarify, we're talking about signage on a development that has been advertised to the community but has yet to come before council. So any consultation on our part would be inappropriate and premature. And all I can say at this stage is that when that possible developer is ready to develop and follow council processes, then they would submit their normal planning applications and would follow normal planning law from that point forward.
But can you offer some idea about how the drainage issues that we've been experiencing over the last couple of years will be addressed?
Again, council, very premature to speculate in any way, shape or form about the issues about that site until the developer actually puts through an application. I mean, and amongst every other issue that does get looked at, I'm sure drainage will be one of the key issues that get looked at when assessing that application, and traffic management and all the other things, amenity and so on, are all things that a council would look at when they're considering a development plan application.
Thank you.
Do any other councillors have any general business? I would like to ask councillors if they might have any nice words for outgoing Ewan Oldmeadow, who is in his last few days with us. I'm padding because I hadn't thought of this, and I would like them to come up with some really lovely words which will come straight to their mind. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to say something?
I'd just like to say that it's been great having Ewan in the Capital Works Department. He's just changed so many things, makes it very clear. These monitors have been fantastic. He's project management, he's sharp, he's onto it, it's moving, it's fast. I imagine it's been a challenge over these last couple of years trying to find the people, the money, the workers, but he's a very impressive person that we're going to really miss, I think, in that space. So sorry to see you go, Ewan.
Councillor Goldsworthy.
I'm of the same opinion. You've done a fantastic job and I'm sorry to see you go. I wish you all the very best into the future.
Councillor Croucher.
Go on, Benny.
I'll let you get in before and then
You allowed him to push in. I'd just like to say, Ewan, you've done a great job. You've earned the respect of the community, which is very hard for some council workers. You'll be missed. And I think it's great that you've been described as a free spirit.
Councillor Croucher.
Yeah, I'd just like to endorse everything that everybody said, but I think the most important thing from my point of view is that you're very, very approachable and you're always fair, you're a good listener, and even when I come up with some of the dumb ideas that I've come up from my turn, you've always listened and given good reports. I'd like to wish you all the best in the future as well.
I'd like to say much of the same and say that it is a really delicate balance to strike between keeping the community happy, keeping the infrastructure department happy, and the community development department happy with infrastructure and all of the different machinations within council and councillors. I think you've done exactly that, not through trying, through raising the maturity level of how we report on capital works. You've certainly commanded the respect of everyone within the organisation and the community, and there was a loud audible groan when we heard that you were leaving, but we wish you all the very best on whatever your next endeavour is. So thank you for your time with Indigo Shire Council. Now we will move into confidential. So I need a recommendation from councillors that the council meeting be closed to the public in accordance with section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020. Councillor Tyson moves that motion and Councillor Gaffney seconds. I'd put it to the vote. All those in favour, carried unanimously. Council has moved a motion to move out of confidential session. We're only moving out now to declare the meeting closed at 8:03 p.m. The next scheduled council meeting is Tuesday, the 28th of March, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.